What does ideal father-daughter time sound like to you? Are ballistic missiles part of the plan? Probably not. But for North Korea's leader and his daughter, it seems to have become a regular affair. They're firing missiles to quote-unquote strike fear into the enemies. We don't know if this counts as quality bonding time, but to each their own, I suppose. Jokes aside, we're talking about an intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM. North Korea fired one yesterday. It flew about 1,000 kilometers and landed in waters west of Japan. This was hours before the South Korean president met with the Japanese prime minister at a summit. They agreed to work closely on regional security with the United States. So how could North Korea not insert itself into the scene? It has done 4 missile displays in about a week. And this time, Kim was accompanied by his daughter. Last week, she was at the live fire demonstration. Last month, she was at the military parade where the monster missiles were on display. And we don't even want to ask ourselves the existential question, what kind of impression is this leaving on his daughter? Is she too young to be involved in this? This is obviously a special case. But there's one question we should ask. Why does Kim want the world to know his daughter? Her name is Kim Jong-un. She's 10 years old and believed to be the second oldest child. According to the South Korean spy agency, she's homeschooled and she spends her time horse riding, skiing and swimming. She was first revealed during an ICBM launch in November. At that time, many had asked the same question, will she lead North Korea one day? The early pictures were jaw-dropping. Since then, Kim Jong-un has accompanied her father at military events, and with each appearance, she seems to have grown in confidence and the respect that she commands. Initially, she was seen clutching her father's hand. Now she takes the center stage, surrounded by military officials. The language used to describe her has also changed. When she was first introduced in the state media, she was referred to as the beloved daughter. But now she's being called the respected daughter. And this distinction is important because in North Korea, and the North Korean media, this adjective is used only for the most revered. Kim Jong-un was called respected after his status as future leader was crystal clear. And remember, the Kim family has ruled North Korea since its foundation, 3 generations of it. They're considered the sacred bloodline to lead this country. So it's not shocking that Kim wants to pass the mantle down. And by the looks of it, Kim Jong-un is the intended heir. But even if she is, what's the rush? She's only 10 years old after all. Her father was revealed as the successor when he was 8 years old. But that was only in private and only to military leaders, not to the world. So what could be the reasons for this shift? Some say it's because of Kim's poor health. He's only 39 and there's no confirmation of any illness. Others say he wants to give his daughter an easier ride. Remember, Kim's own journey was difficult. He was publicly revealed as a leader just a year before his father died. And this gave him a rocky start. He did not get enough time to establish himself. Maybe he wants better for his daughter. And of late, he's been trying to crystallize 2 things, his weapons and his family. Together, they seem to be a deadly combination on showcase for the world to see. Observers say he's using Kim Jong-un as a symbol, a reminder that he will not give up his nuclear arsenal. And now let's talk about the UK. Another type of Brexit is taking place, the Brexit of civic rights. What are we talking about? Global civil society monitor Civicus has downgraded the UK's ranking. It says the UK government is becoming, quote-unquote, increasingly authoritarian. It is restricting protests and deporting migrants. The UK has now been classified as obstructed. That is the word they used. It has joined the likes of Poland, Hungary, Brazil, and many others. You know, the countries that London loves to lecture on rights? It has now joined their club. So what led to this turn of events? How did the once mighty bastion of liberty find itself demoted? Let's go through some of the accusations made by Civicus. First, the attack on the right to strike. The UK government wants to bring a new law to curb strikes. That's because mass strikes in the past few months have hit the government. The cycle began last year. The war in Ukraine led to a cost of living crisis. Britain's inflation crossed 11%. The people were feeling the pinch. They wanted a wage hike. The government resisted. So trade unions took to the streets. There were strikes across the board, from rail to ambulance workers, teachers, nurses, immigration officials. They all marched in protest. The government relented. Yesterday, it agreed to increase wages for National Health Service workers. This is what Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said.
I'm delighted that the government has reached agreement with unions representing over 1 million NHS workers on a fair and reasonable pay settlement. This agreement rightly recognises the fantastic work that our NHS workers like nurses, midwives and paramedics do, whilst also being affordable for the taxpayer and allowing us to deliver on our promises to halve inflation and cut NHS waiting lists. It's a good example of this government getting things done and delivering for the British people.
If the agreement is fair and reasonable, as he says, why did healthcare workers have to demonstrate for months? And why is the government pushing back against strikes? The ruling party is trying to push what's being called the strike bill. It will apply to critical sectors like healthcare and education. They will always need a minimum level of workers. Those who don't comply can be fired, and their unions can be fined. Then there's something called the public order bill. It's been called intentionally vague. This bill is aimed to stop serious disruptions. What are serious disruptions? The ones that are more than minor. I'm not making this up. The draft said all of this. This clause was subsequently removed, but the rest still remains problematic. The bill extends police powers. People can be stopped and searched just on the suspicion of being involved in a protest. The bill criminalizes locking yourself to things, like a lock-on protest, so that you cannot be removed from the site. It also criminalizes other forms of civil disobedience. And we in India aren't too surprised. Rishi Sunak should know all too well about the effectiveness of civil disobedience against British authorities. The Civicus report also considers London's anti-migration push. Conservatives want to restrict the human rights of asylum seekers. They want to ban people from seeking refuge in the UK. This includes the controversial plan to pack refugees off to Rwanda. And of course, the recent rhetoric against people arriving in the UK on boats. Let's stop for a second to appreciate the irony here. The UK is against people arriving on boats. Britain does not want uninvited foreigners landing on its shores. For God's sake, British people on boats is the reason we are talking to you in this language. The UK's anti-migration push is against international refugee conventions and basic human rights. In fact, all the points we mentioned go against fundamental human rights, which is why the UK has been downgraded on the Civicus Freedom Index. It's also why the Human Rights Watch slammed the UK earlier this year. Quick question. Do these reports really matter? Most such reports are political tools to pressurize governments. They're prepared by people with, at best, a peripheral understanding of a society. And they must be taken with a sack of salt. But in this case, we discussed it in detail because London loves to do the same. Western governments and Western media use such findings to point fingers at other governments. We'd like to see how they take this one.